Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier, and thank you for stopping by. Home thoughts start with Victor Hugo from Les Miserables. There is nothing like a dream to create the future. I do love that. On a sad note, obviously, with the Netherlands exiting the World Cup, I'll put up that photograph I took as we took off from Amsterdam and the sun was setting over Amsterdam 57 days ago, and I still like it, and I've used it on my Twitter photo, I must admit. And then going back to Les Miserables, the future has several names. For the weak it is impossible, for the faint-hearted it is unknown, but for the valiant it is ideal. If you haven't listened to any Ali Farka Touré, do listen to the African Blues Petenaire. The link is on Rich Wrap-Ups, and it's really a fantastic music. And came across Shejdal speaking about Jeff Koons on the New Yorker. That link's on the website, and on that note I'll put up the balloons that I like so much that Koons did. RT.com, RT_com tweeted Netherlands versus Argentina dramatic penalty shootout on Twitter, and I liked the photograph they tweeted, sort of captured the moment. And I like this photograph on the New Yorker, on photo booth, special police operations battalion officers playing football on Copacabana Beach. Coming to political reflections, let me start with this from Counter Punch. What we are instead entertained to are the rants and actions of misguided young men, rather pathetic figures, who were obtaining exposure beyond their wildest dreams. And then a quote about what's happening in Gaza and Israel. As a relative of one of the murdered children observed, there is no difference between blood and blood. Newsweek has an extraordinarily good article about Boko Haram terror's insidious new face. It's several weeks since the Islamist militants of Boko Haram kidnapped more than 260 girls from a school in northeastern Nigeria, and the general wants me to see what he's up against. He invites me to his office in the capital, Abuja, and opens his laptop. The general clicks on one folder titled Abu Bakr Shekau. A first clip shows the future leader of Boko Haram in his years as a preacher in a white cap and white bagan riga, the traditional Nigerian pajama, tunic and cape. A second clip is more recent, from 2013, and shows Shekau in a clearing, looking far bulkier in full combat camouflage. The next clip shows Shekau's former number 2, Abu Saad, a few months before his death in August 2013. He is giving a speech to his men on the eve of an attack last year on an army barracks in Bama, Nigeria, a town on the Cameroon border. The fighters, who appear to be mostly teenagers, grin shyly at the camera. Abu Saad says that the attack has been long planned and that most of its architects are dead. You should look for victory or martyrdom, which is victory in the eyes of God, he says. A martyr knows he is going to die, knows there are enemies, but goes to the battlefield anyway, without fear of death, because he loves God, and he knows God will smile on him. The attack begins at dawn. Hundreds of Abu Saad's men are walking through the bush. They begin firing. When they start receiving return fire, they do not change pace or even look for cover. They keep walking almost casually into the fusillade. Bullets whistle over the cameraman's head. Allahu Akbar, God is the greatest, he shouts over and over. Allahu Akbar. All around him, fighters are being cut down. 10 make it to the base fence and take cover behind a toilet block. The cameraman films one shouting at his comrades, "Stop firing from behind." The man yells, "You're hitting us." Suddenly the camera goes down on its side. "They've killed me," says a voice. The general whistles. "I've never seen anything like it," he says, "just walking into death." He opens another video. This time Abu Saad is standing in front of the black and white flags of Al-Qaeda surrounded by 20 boys, all in headscarves, all carrying guns. The boys look as young as 4. The heads of the smallest just reach Abu Sa'd's waist. You must wage war, he tells them, his hands resting on the boys' heads. You must perform every violent act you can. Allahu Akbar, cry the boys. Abu Sa'd turns to the camera. You can kill us, he says, but these children will continue. Children are the future. 10 minutes later, Abu Sa'd finishes. Let's thank God and give him more bodies, he concludes. He then pulls a knife from his combat vest, grabs a dabba, lays him on his side. The crowd starts cheering, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. 2 men hold Dabba's chest and legs. Abu Sa'd holds his head with one hand and starts sawing at Dabba's throat with the knife. Blood jets onto the sandy ground. Abu Sa'd keeps sawing. He can't get through the neck bone. He switches to the back of the neck and starts sawing again. Still, the head won't come off. Abu Sa'd drops the knife and twists Dabba's head around with both hands, trying to snap it off. It doesn't work. He picks up the knife and saws again. Finally, after half a minute, Dabba's head comes free. Abu Sa'd lifts it up by the hair, shows it to the crowd. The eyes are closed, flesh and ligaments are hanging loose. Abu Sa'd places the head on the body. Pretty intense stuff. And then the article jumps to a meeting with Lamido Sanusi. You made it, he exclaims in the Queen's English. The man extends his hand. Lamido Sanusi. We shake hands, and Sanusi gestures at the crowd. Quite the show, eh, he says. I removed bankers from their jobs. I fought the National Assembly over their pay. I put a captain of industry in jail. I said half the civil service should be fired. I said the petroleum minister was leasing her own private planes to the government, paying herself every time she took a flight, he says. Finally, last September, Sanusi told President Goodluck Jonathan that around $20 billion was missing from Nigeria's national oil accounts. When the allegation was leaked a few months later, Jonathan suspended him. He took it personally, says Sanusi. Basically, I have no friends left in Abuja. Almost 1,000 people have been killed since the girls were taken, making more than 3,000 this year. The key question, says Sanusi, is whether a government crippled by ineptitude and greed is capable of addressing the deprivation it has allowed in northern Nigeria and the ferocious rebellion that it has spawned, or whether, just as it celebrates its 100th year by surpassing South Africa as the biggest economy in a surging Africa, Nigeria is disintegrating. A state fails when its leadership fails, says Sanusi. I'm not very optimistic. Our citizens are left on their own to perform the functions of the state. I think we have all the symptoms of a failing state. It's about power, says Sanusi, power and the construction of truth, and isn't that a true thing? This vacuum in the state leaves a hole where Nigeria's national heart should be. Public interest is replaced by self-interest. This is Africa for you. Left to fend for themselves, Nigerians retreat to their sectarian identities, to the delight of communal politicians who stoke division further. Trust is experienced mostly in the negative and the firm belief that everyone is out to con everyone else. When crime equates to money and money to status and status to everything, all shame evaporates. If Nigeria doesn't disintegrate, it's a fair bet that the rupture will start in Jos. The southern half of the city is mostly Christian, the northern half mostly Muslim. And then jumping to a suicide attack, a policeman with a surgical mask draped around his neck walks up. The bodies were on the roof, he says, pointing to a 2-story building a block away. Pieces, 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 he says. The women had cut their neck and throw the head down. We pick them, pick, pick, pick. Jonathan, who had previously accused unnamed northern enemies of being behind Boko Haram, said Al-Qaeda was to blame. Then his wife, Patience, accused the girl's parents of inventing the whole affair to embarrass her husband. Had one of the Bring Back Our Girls protest organizers arrested, told people not to criticize Jonathan, since his presidency was the work of God. and to press a point went on live television and evoked God's presence, wailing, "There is God-o," over and over again. Callousness is why Sanusi is pessimistic. He expects the state to apply the same ruthlessness to anyone, Boko Haram, the Chibok girls' parents, or the Emir of Kano who threatens it. "If you want to fight them, come out and be ready to fight to the end," he says. "There is no guarantee that because you do the right thing, you will have your freedom. These guys do not take any prisoners. You might end up jobless, impoverished, or dead. The history of the world is that when you tell people in power what they do not want to hear, they will destroy you." Powerful stuff. I'll put up a photograph of the Quilox nightclub on Victoria Island, Lagos, which is the latest hub for Lagosian elite party crowd and promotes luxury champagne and high-end products. And you have this extraordinary bifurcation, and particularly the stock market, where the stock market in Nigeria has rallied about 14% over this period that is being described in Newsweek. And it's quite extraordinary in point of fact, and it speaks to a resilience in African markets, which was not there 5-6 years ago. Abu Bakr Shakau, I wrote about him on the 22nd of April when he said to Goodluck Jonathan, "We are in your city." And I was talking about David Lipton of the IMF, who said the new set of risks are geopolitical risks. Geopolitical risks are a bit more on the radar screen than in past years, and given the fragility of recovery, they're more salient than they might otherwise be. And I was saying, from Lipton's comments, we can appreciate there are multiple theatres and spillover risks that remain. Getting caught up in the crossfire of geopolitical uncertainty, I said, not only decimates lives, but decimates your wealth. Talking about the Arab Spring being ignited by Mohammed Bouaziz's self-immolation in 2011, and saying that speaks to a different type of geopolitical risk, that being internal, but nevertheless just as risky. Saying while most states have an overwhelming monopoly on the instruments of violence, what we know is that there are moments when the state's monopoly counts for naught. Just ask Ben Ali, who fled to Saudi Arabia with his wife. As the inestimable Richard Kapuscinski said in his book Shah of Shahs, all books about all revolutions begin with a chapter that describes the decay of tottering authority or the misery and sufferings of the people. They should begin with a psychological chapter, one that shows how a harassed, terrified man suddenly breaks his terror, stops being afraid. This unusual process, sometimes accomplished in an instant like a shock or a lustration, demands illuminating. Man gets rid of fear and feels free. Without that, there would be no revolution. He says, this is Kapuscinski, it is authority that provokes revolution. This occurs when a feeling of impunity takes root among the elite. We are allowed anything, we can do anything. This is a delusion, but it rests on a certain rational foundation. For a while, it does indeed look as if they can do whatever they want. Scandal after scandal and illegality after illegality go unpunished. The people remain silent. They are afraid and do not feel their own strength. At the same time, they keep a detailed account of the wrongs, which at one particular moment are to be added up. The choice of that moment is the greatest riddle of history. Then I said, coming to Africa, we have to accept that geopolitical risks have ratcheted higher. At a macro level, the US and China are, in my view, in a conflictual relationship on our continent. As we drill further down to the micro level, we can see from South Sudan, where I cannot see how either side can win this decisively. And actually, I'm having dinner on Monday with those folks who were rescued by our president from South Sudan, and I'm looking forward to meeting with them. Let's see what they got to say. To places like CAR, a significant deterioration. And then I referred to that comment, "We are in your city," catching my attention. I said that comment could be made by Al-Shabaab. Both Boko Haram and Al-Shabaab represent a risk that David Lipton did not touch on, that being asymmetric risks. The recent bombings in Abuja and last year's attack on Westgate confirm the potency of asymmetric risks. African markets have taken these risks in their stride. They still are. They might stumble if these asymmetric risks ratchet higher, I said then. Abu Bakr Shakau, I call him the taunter, because if you look at this image I'm about to put up, you'll see what I mean. And to taunt is to reproach in a sarcastic, insulting, or jeering manner, to mock, insulting, jibe, or sarcasm. And his whole face is sort of like that, isn't it? Robert Fisk says a future Palestinian state will have no borders and be an enclave within Israel, surrounded on all sides by Israeli-held territories. That's a fact. By yesterday afternoon, Fisk says the exchange rate of death in 2 days was 40-0 in favor of Israel. Almos said the IDF had thousands more targets it could strike in the Gaza Strip and that everything is on the table. And then a report on Bloomberg is saying Gaza rockets threaten nuclear plant as Israel vows force. I'll put up a photograph of smoke billowing from buildings following an Israeli airstrike in Gaza, which is largely a prison. And clearly, in my view, all the Palestinians should emigrate, frankly, because I don't think they're going to make any headway in this situation. On the basis of the power principle, one side's got all the power, one hasn't. A US bomber takes off from Diego Garcia in 2001. I'll put up a photograph of that. And a number of folks think that the MH370 was closer to Diego Garcia than where the search was made, including myself. Xi and Kerry start US-China talks looking past tensions. Remarkably emollient relations must be viewed in the long term, so both countries can keep moving in the same direction. That's the Chinese President Xi Jinping at the opening of the 6th US-China Strategic Economic Dialogue in Beijing. Secretary of State John Kerry, joined by Jacob Liu, spoke of his Shanghai-born grandfather to highlight historic links between US and China. Kerry added that differences over individual issues must not be interpreted as an overall US strategy because the US does not seek to contain China. Well, I don't believe that. This week's talks come at a critical moment, said Zun He, professor at Tsinghua University in Beijing. China saw a strengthening of the US-Japanese alliance in the past few months and was deeply upset about the formal indictment of 5 military officers over cyber espionage. And this was just the top of a long laundry list, said the same professor. There have been no obvious bright spots in cooperation between the world's number 1 and world's number 2 economies, which both sides find unacceptable. A conflict between China and the US would be a disaster for the two countries in the world, Xi said yesterday. As long as we uphold mutual respect, maintain strategic patience, and remain unperturbed by individual incidents and comments, we'll be able to keep relations on a firm footing, despite ups and downs that may come our way. I can tell you that we are determined to choose the path of peace and prosperity and cooperation, and yes, even competition, but not conflict, Kerry said. I'll put up a photograph of Jack Liu on the left, John Kerry, all listening to Xi Jinping. International markets, I agree with this comment by John Kicklighter. A lot of what was said in the FOMC meetings we already know, and we knew quite well. These minutes are incrementally less dovish than prior iterations, but dovish nevertheless. Euro popped higher to 136.46, dollar index popped lower, 80.01. Japanese yen firm to 101.54, Swissy 0.8904, the pound 171.52. Took that manufacturing data in its stride. Aussie back over 94, 94.02, and that's the evidence of how dovish Yellen those minutes were. Indian rupee 59.685. South Korean won 10.1190, Real 221.22, Egyptian pound as it's been for a long time 714.90, and the South African rand 1068.75. I'm going to put up a 3-month chart of the dollar index and refer you back to Yellen's comments on that point. The Fed indicated it will end its bond purchases in October and appeared near agreement on a plan to manage interest rates in the future, according to the minutes. The market, after digesting the Fed minutes, came to the conclusion that the bond buying program ending in October is a sign of economic strength. I think we've got to keep it at the dollar for now. It's not making a move. Euro dollar 136.46. ECB's Mario Draghi reiterated on Wednesday that the ECB is ready to use unconventional instruments if needed in a speech in London. I'll put up a 1-year chart of the Australian dollar, which is now back above 94. Gold, that's been a strong show, 1328.655, near the highest level in a week. Palladium advanced to a 13-year high. Gold traded as high as 1331.46, highest since July the 1st, and clearly we're seeing some short covering in there. I won, I'm not a big bull, gold bull, but it's up 11% this year. Crude oil fell for a 10th day, the longest losing streak on record, last at 101.81. I think it's overshot itself to the downside. The 10-day decline is the longest stretch since futures started trading in March 1983. I think you can sell $90 and $95 puts with a 91-day maturity. I'll put up a tweet from Lloyd's List, which is an infographic mapping the scenarios if Iraq crisis disrupts oil exports. And then finally, I like this baby Greek salad with beets and feta. That was on the Wall Street Journal's magazine. Coming to Africa, the South African oil share just below an all-time high is plus 11.122% this year. Dollar versus rand, a little bit firmer, 10.6875, but still in that range, 10.30 to about 11. Naspers aims to transform itself into a predominantly mobile company, its new CEO said on Wednesday. It's already reinvented itself at least once, going from an apartheid-era newspaper publisher to a media and online giant focused on technology and emerging markets. We will be more of an operator in the internet than we have been. The most exciting part is adjusting ourselves to be predominantly a mobile company. This year, the group consolidated its online classified services in Southeast Asia and Eastern Europe into the OLX brand. Last year, it bought an 80% stake in redbus.com, India's largest bus ticket portal. Van Dijk took over Naspers in April, succeeding Koos Bekker, who stepped down after 17 years of explosive growth that started with a push into pay television and later an investment in China's Tencent holdings. Naspers owns nearly a third of Tencent, China's largest internet company. Highly lucrative pay television business, Mnet. Its share price has increased more than 60-fold since 1994, although they finished down 2.3% yesterday. The Egyptian pound lost at 7.14. Egyptian stock market bounced 0.79% yesterday. It's up 25.258% in 2014, and this is a more than 5-year high. Nigeria all share up 4.1375% in 2014 and at the highest level since October 16, 2008. That goes back to the point I was making about the resilience of African markets in the face of a pretty poor news flow, particularly in Nigeria. The Ghana Stock Exchange is up 11.328% in 2014. The Bank of Ghana increased the key rate by 1% to 19%. They should have done more, given the situation that they find themselves in. It's down 29% against the dollar this year, the worst among 24 African nations, currencies tracked by Bloomberg. They've got a very big problem. They refuse to take hold of it. And I wrote about this on the 2nd of June when I said, look at Ghana, where the president claims he's looking for a homegrown solution to a situation of his making. And frankly, there isn't one. The sooner they call in the IMF, the better. I said, I follow markets ahead of words. And the Ghana cedi has collapsed more than 20% this year and is the loudest signifier of all. The Ugandan shilling fell to a 16-month low, notwithstanding some intervention. The Bank of Uganda sold dollars twice this week to smoothen the market. Heavy dollar demand, apparently. This is the lowest level on a closing basis since February 22nd, 2013. Longest stretch of losses since March 2009. Currency is down 5% this year, which isn't bad when you compare it to something like the cedi. Somebody's saying, I think this is the valid point, the shilling is weakening mainly because of falling yields on government debt. When yields are low, dollars become scarce, and that puts pressure on the currency. Bharti Airtel is to sell 3,100 towers in 4 African nations to Helios Towers. Didn't disclose the size of the 3,100 tower deal or the names of the 4 countries, but a person familiar with the matter told ET, Economic Times India, that it's worth close to $400 million, and the towers are based in Tanzania, DRC, Republic of Congo, and Chad. Coming here to Kenya, the IMF says these are also supporting signals that are positive for increased growth, certainly if not immediately, then over time. The IMF expects Kenya's economy to grow 5.5 to 6% this year, and Mekani said data from one quarter alone was not enough to warrant an immediate review of the projection. Government expects the economy to grow 5.8% this year, while the World Bank forecasts 4.7%. I am a seller of 4.7% GDP in 2014. I yesterday attended the launch of Biashara Smart, which is a collaboration between KCB and Safaricom. It was characterized by the Cabinet Secretary Aiden Mohammed. This is going to transform everything, and I took a photograph, so you'll see a rather nice one actually with a great background. So Safaricom and KCB under this Biashara Smart are targeting small firms with new products. Long-term partnership between the two address financial and telecommunication needs of the country's growing small and medium enterprises. Called Biashara Smart, help SMEs advertise, manage communication resources and provide devices for internet and insurance. SMEs will also get financial advice, low interest rate loans, payroll services and managed websites at cheaper rates. Safaricom CEO Bob Collymore said Biashara Smart will rely on Mbenki for savings and a cloud portal operated by his firm. So I think it's pretty exciting. I think it's a smart collaboration. Safaricom share price is up 17.0506% in 2014, closed at 1270 yesterday. I think heads back above all-time highs, above 13. I'll put up a photograph of the event yesterday, a photograph of Bob and Joshua. KCB up 7.9365% this year. Some headroom, I think, in the price here. I think we're now at 51, but could support at 50, projects to about 55 in my view. And Joshua made the point that access to financing technology is what this partnership is all about. Holcim issued a note yesterday saying we have no intention of making a takeover for Bamburi Cement. Bamburi Cement is down 17.142% this year. If you want to look into the share price data, do have a look at Rich Wrap-Ups where the link is there. This is the last sentence from Jeffrey Gettleman's article in the New York Times. They walked quietly up the darkening roads, almost reluctantly, back to the iron shanties and the slums that are their homes. Scan Group have issued a notice that they're basically buying out an experiential marketing company. Link and details are on the website. EMPL's consolidated revenue for the year 2013 was in excess of 200 million rand. Kenya shilling is firmer at 87.704, and I still like Cedric Mohammed's characterization of it as the Teflon shilling. The Nairobi All Share up 0.18% yesterday, up 11.4452% this year. NSE 20 down 1.015% in 2014, but up 0.15% yesterday. There's a link that you can check any and every share price listed at the stock exchange. Dr. Titus Naikuni, we put up another link where he talks about fleet modernization, Dreamliners, the new terminal, Jomo Kenyatta Airport and aviation. Well worth having a look. And let me leave you with a tweet from Serena Hotels, waking up to a breathtaking sunrise at Serena Amboseli. And indeed, it looked breathtaking. It's very beautiful at Amboseli because you have the Mount Kilimanjaro in the background. Once again, thank you for stopping by. I do appreciate it.